Hi class and professor, this is Alexis Balke, and I am going to provide you a brief overview of my paper, my final paper, United States and North Korea, an intergovernmental system comparison. When I was thinking about what country to select, I tried to think about what is the country that is least like the United States. I thought maybe that would enable me to draw some pretty significant differences, and for obvious reasons I was able to, specifically with the distribution of power, with North Korea being a communist authoritative government and the United States being a presidential elected democratic government. But what I was surprised to find is that I actually found some similarities in the structure of our government. So I'm going to talk about a few of those right now. First off, similar to the United States, North Korea also has three branches of authority: the executive, legislative, and judicial. So similar to the United States, the executive branch in authority encompasses the leader, the president in the United States, or the supreme ruler, which would be Kim Jong-un in North Korea. In North Korea, their president, Kim Jong-un, is also the general secretary of the Korean Workers' Party and the chairman of the National Defense Commission. So I thought that's kind of similar to how our president of the United States is also the commander-in-chief of military affairs. So I thought that was one similarity as far as the executive branch goes. And then there's the legislative branch, which in the United States, that would be something that we would say would be Congress, and in North Korea they have a similar type of system, but it's called the Supreme People's Assembly. We'll call that SPA for short for this report. And they have 687 seats, all of which are elected, but they're elected by the Korean Workers' Party, which is actually the under rule of Kim Jong-un. So even though that they are elected, they're basically all appointed or elected by the president, Kim Jong-un. So once again, he has the supreme power. Now, the assembly does, the Supreme People's Assembly, the SPA, does have the power to overturn or to modify or criticize a bill that was presented by the KWP. But according to the U.S. Library of Congress in 1993, it has been some time since then, but to then, the Assembly has never criticized, modified, rejected a bill or measure placed before it. So it's kind of like if our president or enacted or suggested a bill or a new law, that our Congress or our House of Representatives never, or Senate never, try to deny it or say no. So I thought that was another great example of how powerful the executive authority is in North Korea. So then there is also the judicial branch, or the judicial authority, and that is the judicial system, similar to what you would see in the United States. At the highest level, there's a central court, so that's kind of parallel to the U.S. Supreme Court, and then it would go down to the other layers of judicial. So after the central court, then it's followed by the Court of Appeals, or in North Korea, this would be called the People's Court, or sorry, the Provincial Court, which is what we would think is like the Court of Appeals. So that's provincial. So that's also can be seen as like the county court or Court of Appeals. And then there's at the lowest level the People's Court, which is what we would probably see here as the local district courts. So there's a couple similarities there. There are the three branches of authority that I mentioned, and there's also the layers of judicial authority. So within the judicial branch, there's different layers of court systems. So I thought that was another similarity to how the United States is structured. The next similarity, I think that was two. So another similarity was that I drew was that the government system itself also has a layered system, similar to the cake theory or the layered system that you would see in the United States. The first layer, of course, includes, at the very top, of course, would be the KWP, or the highest level of the executive branch, or the supreme ruler. And then it would go down into the provinces. And so the provinces is what I would say would be parallel to what we would see here as state governments. And then the next layer is in North Korea is cities, urban districts, and counties. And there's 27 of those. And to me, that would be what we would see as being a county government in the United States. And then lastly, they have the third level, which is the lowest level, and that would be of the villages, traditional villages, and that would what I would call or draw a parallel to what we have as cities or town governments. So there's the layers of the judicial branch, there's the layers of government, and there's the three branches of authority, all similarities. And then lastly, despite what I thought, and this is the surprise to me, similar to the United States, that the North Korean people at the local level do have some voting power when it comes to members of their local communities in charge of administrative duties. So someone similar to what we would call as the mayor or governor, their activities would be making economic plans, developing budgets. But up until this point, all local government, local representation that has been voted into office has been a unanimous vote, and it's unanimous because it has been, I guess, pressured, or it is the person that is up for election that is most supported by the KWP, by the ruler, supreme ruler, is who always gets elected. So although they do have the right to vote, it is an expectation of conformity as far as who they actually elect, and then it really does just go in line with whatever the supreme power wants. So again, it's kind of an illusion of a local people's voice. They have a voice, but they're basically being told what to say. So again, some of the obvious differences, I already mentioned that, were the distribution of power, a centralized supreme power that you would see in North Korea versus the distributed power through the three branches and the multiple places of checks and balances that you see in the United States. Another large difference or significant difference is the human rights and freedoms. According to Human Rights Watch, who has done a lot of studies on North Korea and studies around the world, despite the new leadership under Kim Jong-un, after his father passed, the human rights in North Korea continue to remain dire. And a quote that they said was, more than 200,000 North Koreans, including children, are currently imprisoned in camps where many perish from forced labor, inadequate food, and abuse by guards. So I think that's just so sad and incredibly disturbing, especially the fact that there's children. And what I found out is that if a father was committed a political crime, not only does he go to the camps, the imprisoned camps, but actually his whole family would go with him. Another thing that I saw that was incredibly sad and heart-wrenching is that in 2014, the North Korea Country Review that talks about political freedoms and civil liberties ranks each country on a scale of 1 to 7, with 1 being the utmost free and 7 being the least amount of freedom and civil liberties. And North Korea actually scored the highest at 7. So the country with the least amount of freedom and liberties, and the actual trend arrow was facing downwards, so it's only getting worse. I don't know how you can get any worse than the lowest, but they are on their way. Whereas the United States is actually ranked 1, meaning that they had the utmost free. We have the utmost free country, and with North Korea being the most oppressive. So some of the discussion I just had right now just really provides a description of how North Korean government is obviously, you can draw some obvious conclusions that it's not effective. The primary reasons is that North Korea is viewed in such a negative light. It's really due to its secrecy, its self-reliance, its inability to reach out and work with other countries, and the oppression of their people. Economically, North Korea's profile is as dire as their human rights. They are known as to be one of the world's poorest and least developed countries. A lot of this is due to what I think is due to that challenge in balancing the finding of economic solutions without offending leadership. So I find that's probably a significant factor in the underdevelopment. And the World Report in 2012, the North Korean World Report, stated that in March of 2011, there was a joint UN survey that was done, and it was estimated that over 6 million vulnerable persons or people in North Korea urgently required international food assistance to avoid famine. The United States and Japan did help out with a lot of the food assistance, but it's still in really dire shape. So despite many of the obvious weaknesses in North Korea, I did challenge myself to try to think of what are some potential strengths or some things that maybe the United States could, protocols the United States could adopt into their government. And I came up with 3. Now, I'm going to have to tell you that they're still kind of weak, and but I did try to fit them in and draw some conclusions on what that would look like for the United States. There is a sense of nationalism when you look at governments that have communist or central rule, or something similar to a parliament system. You often see a stronger sense of nationalism. This is probably because the ruler, the power figure stays in office for a life term and is often passed down through bloodline, so they do have that sense. So that is one thing that I could say you could maybe pull as a strength. The second is that, and this is another one that might be kind of a hard connection, but I was able to kind of draw it, is that North Korean government, now because that their ruler is in office for a very long time, the ruler has the president has the ability to really see through initiatives, or to really push priorities and allow the people to really understand what those priorities are, and to kind of see through all of their initiatives to fruition, and not really have any type of a barrier or interception in the middle of that. Whereas sometimes you'll see in the United States that an initiative or something won't be seen all the way through because there's a change in office, and these initiatives keep switching or moving around, and it's hard to stay focused on what the actual priorities are of the United States. So in some research I did find a lot of people are in favor of having our presidential term changed to 6 years, but then just a single term, so they're not up for re-election after that 6 years. And I think that adopting something like that may help that. And then lastly, something that we talked about earlier in the quarter about the bureaucracy, or trying to get over the red tape as far as when it comes to enacting laws, how centralized governments, parliament systems, or in this communist systems, would be able to enact laws much faster than what you would experience in a democratic government, where there's a lot of checks and balances and a lot of red tape and a lot of different between Congress, the House of Senate, the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then judicial, Supreme Court overturning laws. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that laws could be stunted. So with a centralized power, that would definitely allow for a speedier process. So in conclusion, I personally do not feel that the United States should adopt any of North Korean approaches to their government structure. I think for obvious reasons. They are the lowest ranking human rights, human freedoms. They're the poorest underdeveloped country in the world. What it really did for me is it makes me really thankful to be part of the United States. How they treat their constituents is just heart-wrenching, And I couldn't imagine living in a country that was stricken with so much oppression and not really having any freedoms. So in writing this report, it really makes you kind of take a step back and be thankful for what you have in the United States. And if that doesn't increase our patriotism, I don't know if anything will. So with that, thank you for listening to my video, and I hope that everyone had a great quarter, and I look forward to seeing you in upcoming classes. Thanks.